Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm really excited to present my research proposal today. It's a project that I believe tackles a really critical challenge in a huge industry, but it also has some major implications for global food security.
So what I'm focusing on, specifically, is a very persistent and costly bottleneck in aquaculture. And as we all know, this is one of the fastest-growing and most vital food sectors on the entire planet.
Okay, so here's our game plan for the next few minutes. First, we're going to talk about the big picture challenge in aquaculture. Then we'll dive into something I'm calling the probiotic paradox. After that, I'll introduce my proposed solution, what I like to think of as a microscopic life raft. We'll look at how we're going to find the perfect recipe for it, the plan to test it in the real world, and finally, we'll talk about the huge sustainable payoff this could have.
All right, let's start with the big picture. What are the stakes here? Aquaculture is absolutely booming globally, and India is a massive player. For so many small-scale farmers, say, in places like Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, this is everything. It's not just a business. It's their entire livelihood. But there's a huge, constant threat they're facing.
And that main threat? It's disease. One single outbreak can just wipe out an entire fish stock, which for a farmer is financial ruin. Now, for years, the answer was just to pump them full of antibiotics, but we all know now that's a dead end. It's just not sustainable. A much, much better solution is probiotics. These are the good bacteria that actually boost fish health. They really are the future, but there's a huge catch. A big flaw in how we actually get them to the fish.
And that flaw, that catch, well, that brings us right to the core of my research. I call it the probiotic paradox. And it's an incredibly frustrating situation because the very process we use to deliver this amazing solution is the exact same thing that completely destroys it.
So here's the paradox, laid out plain and simple. On the one hand, you've got the promise of probiotics. For them to work, they have to be delivered alive and in really high numbers. But on the other hand, you've got the reality of how we make fish feed. We have to use this high-heat extrusion process to make the pellets, and that process, well, it subjects these tiny living things to temperatures that kill up to 90% of them. You see the problem?
And this chart really just hammers the point home. It's a pretty stark picture, right? We start with this huge potent dose of probiotics, so much potential. But then you run it through that violent extrusion process, and what are you left with? Barely anything, just a shadow of what you started with. It's not enough to do any good. We're literally neutralizing our own best weapon before it even gets to the fight.
So the big question is, how do we solve this? How do we get past this paradox? Well, my solution is to build them a ride, to engineer a kind of microscopic life raft designed specifically to carry these good bacteria safely right through the storm of the manufacturing process.
Now, the technical term for this life raft is microencapsulation, but really you can just think of it as creating a tiny edible suit of armor for each little probiotic. This special coating shields them from everything, not just the crazy heat of extrusion, but also the acid in the fish's gut. The whole point is to make sure they arrive alive and ready to do their job right where they're needed.
And the way we build this armor is actually a really neat two-step process. First up, we make the core. We mix the probiotics into a natural gel. It comes from algae, and that forms a little soft bead. Then, step 2, we add the shield. We coat that little bead with something called chitosone, which is this amazing natural polymer you get from crustacean shells. It gives it strength and, crucially, resistance to acid.
Okay, so we have the ingredients, but you can't just throw them all together and hope for the best. Creating the perfect shield, the ultimate little suit of armor, that takes more than guesswork. It needs a really systematic, data-driven approach to find that one perfect recipe.
So that leads to the next big challenge, right? How do we find that perfect formula when there are just countless possibilities? You've got different concentrations, different timings, all these variables. How in the world do you find the absolute best one?
The answer is something called response surface methodology, or RSM. And this is the secret sauce. You can think of it like a super powerful GPS for science. Instead of trying every single possible combination, which would take forever, RSM lets us intelligently map out the relationships between our ingredients and our goals. It guides us right to the sweet spot, the optimal formula, without all the guesswork.
Okay, so finding that perfect recipe in the lab is huge, but it's only step 1. Proving that it actually works in the real world, that's what really matters. So here's our roadmap for taking this technology from the lab all the way to the lake.
It's a 24-month plan, broken down into 4 clear phases. For the first 9 months, we're in phase 1. That's all lab work. using RSM to perfect the formula. Then for phase 2, we scale up. We start actually making fish feed with our optimized microcapsules. Phase 3 is the big one, the real-world test. We'll run an 8-week feeding trial with about 300 fish to measure everything. And finally, phase 4 is where we bring it all home, analyze all the data, publish our findings, and develop a patent.
So this all leads to the big question, right? The so what? What's the payoff here? If this all works, what's the actual, tangible impact? Let's put some numbers to it.
Our central hypothesis, the big idea we're testing, is that this whole microencapsulation process will boost the survival of probiotics by at least 80%. And let me be clear, this isn't just a small tweak. This would be a game-changing leap. It would totally revolutionize how effective this kind of fish feed can be.
So our first major goal is to hit over 90% encapsulation efficiency. Basically, that just means we're successfully building that suit of armor around the probiotics. It's our proof of concept. It tells us the shield is being built right, and it's ready to go.
Now, the second metric, this is the one that really matters. We're aiming for over 80% viability after the extrusion process. To put that in perspective, remember that graph from earlier? We're going from less than 10% survival to over 80%. That's more than an 8-fold increase. This is what unlocks the entire potential of probiotics. This is the solution to the probiotic paradox.
And what does that mean for the farmers? It's simple. This science translates directly into healthier fish that grow faster. And that means more profitability for them. It's a straight line from our lab work to their bottom line. It's a total win-win. But look, the impact here goes way beyond just one lab or one farm. We're talking about helping to build a more sustainable, more resilient aquaculture industry. It means less reliance on antibiotics, and that's huge for global health. It ties directly into India's Blue Revolution goals. And maybe most importantly, we're creating a technology that's cost-effective and accessible, something that can actually help small-scale farmers, boost local economies, and really contribute to feeding the world. So, to wrap it all up, what I've presented today isn't just a theory. It's a tangible, data-driven, and scalable solution for a really critical problem. I'm confident this work can have a real, lasting, and positive impact. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have. Thank you.